guess we can start. So, all right. So, dear Nordic friends and friends of Nordics, welcome to our second Smart Cities Virtual Market Entry Program Stakeholder Introduction webinar. My name is Sami Askelainen from Nordic Innovation House, and I will be your host today. So, it's my great pleasure to warmly welcome you all to our session today. And before we start, a couple of quick house rules as usual. So please note that all the participants are automatically muted. We do have a Q&A session at the end of this webinar, so you can ask questions from our panelists or our guests or from our team members. And just please remember to indicate to which speaker your question is for. Please also note that this session will be recorded and we will share the information package with all the participants after the event, including all the presentation decks and then the videos. Good. So today we are super excited to have two very important organizations with us that are improving people's livelihoods and addressing the sustainable development goals in developing countries in Southeast Asia region and also beyond. So UNDP and ADB Ventures. And both of our guests will be sharing shortly how they are actually doing this and enabling this under the Smart Cities theme. And we will also hear some very insightful and concrete examples and why smart cities are becoming more and more important to achieve these SDGs. So without any further ado, from ADB, we have Kunal Upadhyay, who operates as a senior fund manager at the ADB Ventures based in India. And then from UNDP, we have Elba Fuster of Figuerola, who is a technical expert, digitalization and smart cities at the UNDP Global Center for Technology, Innovation and Sustainable Development, and she is based in Singapore. Super excited and very glad to have you both here today. So warm welcome.
Thank you so much, Sami.
And before then we hand over then to Kunal and Elba, me and my colleague Markus Kuusinen from Business Sweden will provide you a little bit more background information about Nordic Innovation House and also then our Smart Cities Virtual Market Entry Program that will play stake in October. So let's start with the Nordic Innovation House, which is really essentially a community platform that helps and accelerates high-quality Nordic tech startups, scale-ups, and growth companies that are coming to Singapore and Southeast Asia. And of course, one of the key ways how we are helping them is to really help them to connect to the right ecosystem stakeholders here in Singapore. And I would say we have a very unique collaboration across all the Nordic countries. We are also supported by the Nordic Council of Ministers and an organization called Nordic Innovation, which is headquartered in Oslo. And currently in Singapore, we have a fastly growing community of 40+ members coming from multiple verticals. And these are the companies who we are working on a daily basis. But then, besides this industry agnostic work, what we're doing with the companies, we have a very clear focus on specific verticals, such as med and health tech, sustainability and impact, and smart cities. And in all of these focus areas, we are running these market entry programs, which are providing really good opportunity then for the Nordic companies to meet the relevant stakeholders here in Singapore and Southeast Asia, and understand also better that what kind of solutions they're looking for and what kind of solutions are needed here. So it's an excellent way to start building your foundations here in Singapore. And our Smart Cities program will take place actually fairly soon, so in October, and Markus will share a little bit more details about that. So on my behalf, again, welcome all for our today's session, and Markus, over to you.
Perfect. Thank you, Sami. Now, as Sami mentioned, a program that we will be running very soon is the Smart City program that we here in Singapore. So we actually already have quite a lot of startups that have joined the program, but we have a couple of spots left. So if there would be any startups here on the call today that haven't already joined. We have 2-3 more spots left to join the program. So what is the market entry program that we will be running here in October? So it's a couple of areas that will be included in the program. So one will be, which is kind of what we do today here, is that we will have this stakeholder introduction webinars. So today we will have UNDP and ADB on the call. So we will have introduction stakeholder webinars. But then during the actual week, it's of course the core focus for the week will be to showcase the various products and solutions that are offered by our Nordic startups. So that will be through both meeting with potential clients, it will be to meet with potential partners, and also for the ones that are interested in have the opportunity to discuss with investors. So I will come back a little bit to how the setup will be during the two weeks program, but there will also will be individual meetings as well. But I will show you how the setup will be. So also included in the program will be a 6 months membership in the Nordic Innovation House. If you want more information about that, you can connect with Sami after the call. But it's a very valuable thing that will be included in the program. So if we move on to the next one. So the core goal, of course, with our market entry program is, of course, that we here in the region would like to have more Nordic startups here in the region. And how we're doing that is by interacting with the various stakeholders that we have here in Singapore and throughout Southeast Asia to collect various problem statements and match them with the companies back home. So kind of the journey that we have gone through now since the beginning of the year is to interact with the various stakeholders down here to understand a little bit what kind of solutions that they would like to find and kind of implement into the region. And what we've done now the latest months is, of course, to reach out in the Nordics to find the best startups to include in this program. And as I mentioned, we have 2-3 more spots left to join the program. So if you haven't joined, please do so. So if you move on. So and the 3 different phases, I'll just mention them briefly, but we kind of left the first phase, which was all about informing about the program, informing about the business opportunities that we have here in the region. So that was kind of a work that we started, I would say, in the beginning of May and been running until kind of a month ago. So what the phase that we kind of enter now is to prepare our startups that have been joining the program so they are as prepared as possible to meet the various stakeholders here in Singapore. Then, of course, the most important part of the program will be the virtual program, the market entry program that we will be running in October, which will be between the dates of the 12th and the 23rd of October. So if we move on to the next one, I think we can skip this one and then I can go through on the next one. So how the setup will be for the actual program, as I mentioned, it will be during 2 weeks. So the first week, the participating startups will be able to pitch for all the different stakeholders that will be involved in the program. I will, on the next slide, just give you a little bit information on that one. But so the first week, you will be able to pitch for various stakeholders during a 2-hour session. And then during the second week, you will be able to have individual meetings with the various stakeholders. So the first week, it's entirely focused on having those sessions, 5-minute pitches for all the different stakeholders. And then the second week, it will be individual sessions, half an hour to an hour sessions to discuss with the various stakeholders that might be interested in the various solutions. So what stakeholders have we involved in the program? It's quite big mix of different stakeholders. It's, of course, to a large extent, it's focused on Singapore, but the 2 stakeholders we have involved in the call today, ADB and UNDP, have a much broader scope for the region and Asia as a whole, and global as well. But in general, like the stakeholders that will be involved in the market entry program will be various companies in Singapore that are working with smart city implementations. It will be government actors such as IMDA, Enterprise Singapore, etc. We will have the companies, as I mentioned, will be JTC, ST Engineering, etc. That are working with smart city solutions. So in overall, the companies that are participating will be able to pitch for approximately 8 to 10 very important stakeholders in the region. So I would say in a very short time span, you will be able to interact with the key stakeholders in the region. So I think it's a very great opportunity. So if we move on to the next one, so actually, as I mentioned, the deadline was actually 2 weeks ago, but we have updated now. So if you would be interested in this program, we have actually updated a deadline to today. So you actually have today to apply. So you would have the link to the sign up form in these slides, and I think we also can provide them in the chat or something as well here, so you will be able to access it as well. Perfect. So, and if you would have any kind of immediate questions today, then you can reach out to the respective individual that are involved from your country. So for Sweden will be myself, for Norway will be Paul or Christer, from Finland will be Rico, and from Iceland will be Haldora. And then you can always as well, Sami that did the introduction now, reach out to him or Jacqueline as well that are working directly in the Nordic Innovation House. But yeah, keep in mind, if you're interested, apply today, because we have a couple of spots left in the program.
Good, thank you, Marcus. And also, when Marcus said today, we really mean today, because we actually have a first preparation webinars on this coming Friday with the companies who have approved so far. So we will then start taking the companies deeper and start preparing them. But thank you, Marcus. And like I said, if any questions, you can contact these people who can see on the slide, or then directly me or my colleague Jackie for the further information. But next, we're going to hand over then basically for Kunal from ADB Ventures. So Kunal, if you can share your slides and start the presentation, please.
Hi, everyone. Can you guys hear me well and see my screen?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining in. And it's a real pleasure to be presenting to all of you and being a part of this event being organized by the Nordic Innovation House. As pretty much all of you know, Asia is going to be scaling up significantly, trying to catch up with the world at large. And many of our cities and villages are going to be following the path that many of the best cities in the world have taken, and creating these smart cities in the Asian context will become extremely important for them to be sustainable, for them to be livable for people at large. And really hoping that many of you guys will participate in the NIH program, but also really hoping that many of you can build your technologies and make them scale up in the Asian context through a partnership with ADB Ventures. So over the next half an hour or so, maybe I'll give you a quick snapshot on what ADB Ventures is. Many of you may be aware about Asian Development Bank, which is, for the lack of any other analogy, the equivalent of the World Bank, but for Asia. So it's the developmental bank created in 1966. Across the world, there are several members who are participants to the Asian Development Bank as members. Many of them are, of course, in the region itself, which is Asia, Southeast Asia. There are around 40 borrowing members. Of course, Asian Development Bank, the primary customer for the bank is really the various nations in the region who borrow from the bank. Of course, Japan and US are the largest members, but we've had significant engagement with countries in the Nordic region as well, who've been close partners and contributors to various initiatives that are run by Asian Development Bank. So it has existed for a long time, since 1966, as I said. As ADB was looking at what are the key interventions it ought to be making and coming up with a 2030 vision, a few adjectives became very, very important. And it's really aiming to achieve a prosperous, inclusive, resilient, and sustainable Asia and the Pacific. At the same time, continuing with its effort to eradicate extreme poverty. So poverty eradication continues to be an important objective, but at the same time, building a resilient and prosperous and sustainable Asia is very, very critical. And that's where this conversation becomes all the more relevant. Many of you are creating interesting innovations which can contribute to this end vision of ADB. And keeping that in mind, that many of these innovators are actually going to come from small enterprises and not necessarily always large corporates. What did get created was ADB Ventures. It has been created as an initiative within the private sector operations department of ADB. And again, just to draw a parallel, if you guys are aware of the International Financial Corporation, which is a private sector arm of the World Bank. So the PSOD is in some sense the equivalent of an IFC within ADB, and works primarily with the private sector, unlike most other parts of ADB, which engages with the governments in the region. And ADB Ventures has been created to basically support early stage innovations and enterprises and small and medium enterprises in basically companies that are creating solutions for the region. So you can be an entrepreneur creating interesting solutions anywhere in the world, and ADB Ventures will have the mandate to support you, provide you early stage equity capital, provide you hand-holding support, leverage ADB's networks, wherewithal, know-how to help you get de-risked as you try to enter the Asian economies. And that's where we are there to partner with you and help you guys out. ADB Ventures has just gotten started, and I'll talk about a little bit more on the vision of ADB Ventures going forward. But at this point in time, there are 3 interventions that we've created. I'll start from the right-hand side, which is called Labs, wherein we partner with leading accelerators across the world to identify interesting impact technologies that can be supported by ADB Ventures. So typically, how it works is we'll join hands with an accelerator who will provide various support. But in addition to that, ADB Ventures would provide additional support in terms of networking, in terms of even we are considering providing small amount of seed capital to the participants of the program. But we typically cover some amount of costs and help the operators of the accelerators out. So that's our earliest stage intervention, if you may, because many of these startups are just getting started, or they've got initial product market validation, which is going to happen through the accelerator program. So we come in and provide the support there. The second piece, which is a fairly interesting instrument that we've been able to create, is called the Seed. It is kind of a reimbursable grant that we provide to early stage companies. And again, I must highlight that these are companies that can be anywhere in the world. So if you are a Nordic company wanting to enter Asia immediately, or even in the midterm, this could be a potential instrument for us to engage with you. What this allows us to do is to put up to anywhere between $50,000 to $250,000 in each company that we engage with. So we can provide you a seed grant. It allows us to engage with you, maybe see your action, see the impact that you are able to generate over the next 6 to 9 months. or even longer in some cases. And then it opens the door for you to actually receive equity funding from the Fund 1, which is our $60-odd million fund that has been created. And again, thanks to the support of Nordic Development Fund, the government of Finland, who also contributed towards the Fund 1. And it allows us to follow through on many of the seed investments or seed grants that we've given out to startups, but also at the same time, companies or startups out there who are wanting to, again, enter the Asian market can directly get access to this funding as well. Typically, out of the fund, we would make anywhere between 20 to 30 investments in the next few years. What is unique about ADB Ventures Fund 1 is that it's as patient a capital as you can find to enter a somewhat risky market, which is Asia. The fund life is much longer than most other venture capital funds. So it is patient in the true sense. We have the ability to hold our investment in a company for up to 10 to 12 years. The fund life itself is around 17 years. So as a result, it gives us a long runway to engage with you, help you get de-risked, help you scale up in times to come. Yeah, just going back and giving you a little bit of a view on what our vision is. We hope to be one of the most leading impact tech investment platform in the region. Our end goal is that over the next few years, maybe 3 to 4 years, we are hoping that we would have a bunch of different products that would exist, ranging from mezzanine debt to growth stage capital being available for impact enterprises in the region. The end goal again being that we would aim to raise close to around $1 billion in risk capital across different product platforms that we would create. We've just launched our first fund, which is called the Fund 1, focused more on early stage enterprises. I'll talk about 2 important metrics that we have, and the Smart Cities initiative, I'm presuming, will be a good fit with both the impact mandates that we carry. The phase 2 of our effort is really to scale up many of these interventions across Asia and create multiple financing platforms, as I was talking about. These could range from debt, venture debt, growth capital. We are even considering creating a fund of funds. So many of those interventions will act as a continuum, provide end-to-end support for any enterprise which is wanting to scale up their solutions in the region. And again, I must highlight and compliment all you guys for some great innovations, especially in the sustainability space that the Nordic region has been producing. While you guys are great creators, out here in Asia, the demand is huge. So there's a significant supply-demand matching that can happen with all of us coming together. And kudos to NIH for putting in the effort and bringing the 2 pieces together, which is the innovators and the end market. We are hoping that we can play an active role in the journey of many of you guys into Asia. We are much like what we heard in the context of NIH. The ADB Ventures platform wants to really contribute towards many of the sustainable development goals. And we'll talk about them, but the current fund that we have touches on many of them. Some of the things that we are wanting to do through the labs really is to, one, and we've created multiple labs already in partnership with various players. And as you can see here, they cut across a range of themes, right from travel to energy to water to agri-tech, all relevant in the smart cities context as well. The way we typically work is we would map the industry demand in the developing Asia together with a leading corporate. Across the world, we would source some of the best in class impact tech solutions. And then through our various interventions that either we would make through initiatives like the seed or our partners would make, we would help them validate their solutions, reduce their market entry risk, and eventually help them scale up through other kind of suite of support that we are able to provide. As I was referring to earlier, through the seed program, we have the ability to provide risk capital at a very early stage. It's almost in the nature of a reimbursable grant. We put in the money, help you de-risk to a certain extent, and bring about a product market fit validation. And once that has been done, we would go in and be in a position to actually provide the next round of capital through our fund one. And the seed instrument is a very interesting one because unlike many other dilutive products or safe products that exist out there in the market, which either carry on your book as debt or take a significant equity early on, for companies who don't want to dilute significantly, it's a great product because if and when we convert, we will convert only when we are offering you a greater amount of equity through the fund one. So while we take the option of investing out of the fund one, in case we don't invest out of the fund one, we will forfeit the seed grant that we are providing to you as well. So in some sense, it becomes a great non-dilutive tool for startups to come and expand into the region. And once the expansion plan has been validated, we will follow suit with a much larger amount of investment, even investing anything of the order of 1 million to 4 million in the first check. And then subsequently, we will have the ability to scale up or double down on some of the best ones. We are hoping that in the next few years, next couple of years, we would invest in anywhere between 40 to 50 seed grants. We are also in the process through our lab programs. We are hoping that we'd be able to increase the number of grants that we'd be able to provide to the startups. As I was saying, we've already met the first close of the fund. We are now actively evaluating and investing in startups. We've already backed 5 companies out of the seed initiative, but we are also in the process of investing out of the main fund. And as I was referring to earlier, we have the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Finland. We have the Nordic Development Fund. So as a fund, we have close relationship with the Nordic region. And we're really looking forward to closely partnering with NIH and all of you to see if some of your solutions can be scaled up in the region. I did briefly refer to this in an earlier slide, but the way we look at it is we are hoping that almost 80% of the companies that we would back would have a climate impact. And a climate impact doesn't necessarily have to be a climate mitigation, which is what a renewable energy or energy efficiency solution will bring about. But it could also be climate adaptation. So for example, if some of you are building solutions which are in the financial technologies, fintech space, or let's say in financial inclusion space, building solutions for the masses, these are great products. We do believe that they serve the most vulnerable population, and that vulnerable population could really gain from more resiliency driven products that are getting created across the world. So that's how we define the climate impact. We are hoping that almost 80% of the investments that we will make will be broadly in the climate resiliency space or climate impact space. And similarly, around 75%, we believe that we need to promote gender neutrality, especially in the region. The region has traditionally lagged behind the developed world when it comes to equality and equity. And we believe our intervention to back ventures that promote gender impact, and gender impact, again, it could mean you are creating solutions which empower women, but these could also be solutions which are being created by women, or solutions that significantly leverage or could increase the women power in the supply chain. So any of those would qualify as gender impact from our lens, and therefore very happy to engage with entrepreneurs who are either women or who want to be more inclusive and engage more women from the region in their ventures. In terms of geography, many of our enterprises we are hoping will serve the Southeast Asia. So almost 50% of the enterprises would be focusing on the Southeast Asian market, another 30% on South Asia, and rest in the other emerging Asia. So a good split across Asia. And if you are an entrepreneur who's building solution and wanting to enter any of the countries in the region, you could be a very good fit with our mandate. In terms of how we take some of our decisions, what are we looking for in case any of you are interested in engaging with us? We're typically looking for both startups as well as growth stage companies. We have the ability to invest, as I said, anywhere between 1 to 4 million in our first check. We can even go down less than $1 million if the situation does demand. So typically it means that we would participate in a pre-series A, series A kind of an investment, but follow through in multiple rounds, be a close partner to you subsequently as well. We are typically, given the fact that we also have a seed product, which we use for earlier stage companies, which are looking for a product market fit validation. Out of the fund, we would typically come in once that validation has been done. So we would typically take less of an R&D risk or a market validation risk early in the life cycle of a startup. The areas, the sectors of interest are fourfold, and we'll go deeper into it. But broadly speaking, clean tech and clean energy being one, sustainable agriculture being another one, inclusive fintech being an important one, and inclusive healthcare being a very important area of our interest. In terms of ADB, and again, I think ADB as a platform, or ADB Ventures as a platform, is very uniquely poised to add value to many of enterprises, especially those wanting to enter their member countries. We of course have, ADB has an office in many of these countries and a strong resident mission that exists, which allows us to leverage not just expertise, but significant networks that we have in each of these countries, whether it means helping you overcome some of the regulatory barriers, whether it means helping you get connected with local stakeholders, whether it's investors, whether it is banks, whether it is corporate customers. ADB can significantly bring that to the table. As I mentioned, we have a long fund life cycle, and therefore we can be a fairly patient investor. But also, given our expertise and operator philosophy that we've created, it allows us to add significant value where we have to, but at the same time, we can be fairly hands-off wherever we are not required to add significant value. That's a big value add. And of course, in the region and even otherwise, ADB is a very strong brand to be associated with. It can open a lot of very interesting doors for our entrepreneurs, and therefore, definitely some of the reasons that you as an entrepreneur could keep in mind when you are wanting to enter the region. Just diving a little deeper into each of the areas so that you as potential entrepreneurs, or if there are others in your network, could benefit from it. And I mean, this slide is most relevant in the context of the Smart Cities initiative. If you look at Asia, there are, within the clean tech and clean energy space, there are some very interesting trends that are emerging. And of course, many of these trends are getting exacerbated as a result of COVID. So if you look at the first bucket, more than 200 odd million people in Asia Pacific, even today, have very basic access to electricity. Most people are still dependent on fossil fuel. Most people are still dependent on burning wood or coal for their cooking. 93 of world's top 100 polluted cities are actually found in the region. So significant challenges that exist, which ought to be solved, whether it is newer products, affordable products, figuring out the right business model or financial model to overcome the people's ability to invest upfront in a solution, and therefore creating a pay-as-you-go solution could be a way out. Creating a no-frills product could be a way out. So many of those opportunities exist in the region. Again, if you look at the second bucket, given the fact that Asia is going to be in the next few decades seeing significant growth, it also means that it is going to be consuming a lot of energy, which is a fairly frequently debated topic. And if you look at it, energy and intensity in the Asia Pacific region ranks amongst one of the highest, but at the same time, we have to bring about energy efficiency, whether it takes the form of industrial energy efficiency solutions or building energy efficiency solutions, whether it is newer products, which is leveraging, let's say, solutions like artificial intelligence and allowing reduction of energy in an automated fashion through algorithms which are being created, or whether it is pure play business model innovations which crowd in more capital into the sector and deliver good returns to the investors. All of those are interesting opportunities that could exist. And it requires multiple stakeholders to come together, capital, technology, large corporates who are creating interesting new products, whether it is the large transformers or small household thermostats. Pretty much everything is required to be created for Asia. And when solutions are created for Asia, they will be required to be much lower cost. But once created, these are solutions which can be very easily replicated or scaled up in the global market as well. So that's a good segment for entrepreneurs to focus on. And finally, the last one in this segment, the circular economy. As you know, more than 60% of the global share of FMCG is in the region. And there is definite need to move towards low carbon and green initiatives there, whether it is on the packaging side, reuse side, lot of interesting opportunities that are required, because we need to somehow ensure that the Asian cities don't continue to grow. And I can definitely talk in the context of India. I mean, significant dump yards that get created. So can we create a more sustainable and circular economy? There could be a big opportunity for the entrepreneurs. On the agri-tech side, I mean, there's significant vulnerability that the poorest of the poor, who are typically farmers in the region, we need to reduce their dependency on the vagaries of climate change. And this would typically mean either use of new technologies or growing newer crops, kind of ensuring that they're better prepared to deal with the intensity of droughts and natural disasters which may hit them. So many of these solutions are required to be created. I mean, COVID has again proven that supply chains become very important. And going forward, our view is that a lot more localized supply chains will get created. So entrepreneurs out there creating supply chains, especially let's say in the urban context, city context, if they can be made to be self-sustainable, not necessarily depending on what is getting produced, say anything beyond a 50-mile or 100-mile radius, could be a very interesting opportunity that will get opened up for entrepreneurs. So again, contributing significantly to the concept of smart cities. And finally, big opportunity to create more sustainable inputs in foods. We are seeing great trend towards people moving from meat to plant-based meat, people moving to more healthy and resource efficient food inputs, So all of these are interesting opportunities that will open up in times to come, and any solutions being created elsewhere in the world will have a large market in the Asian context, and therefore entrepreneurs should be looking out for these. Finally, or rather, inclusive fintech is the third area. And again, I can't highlight more the need for creation of fintech solutions or financial inclusion solutions for the masses in the region, whether it is making finance accessible for the underbanked and unbanked, be it in the form of savings, investments, be it in the form of credit, be in the form of other structured products. Typically, the bottom of the pyramid in the region are significantly vulnerable because they don't have any savings. And any climate event typically wipes off any of their savings, so fintech becomes extremely important. It is also equally important for other areas. So, for example, if we look at green finance, big opportunity, unlike globally where a lot of capital has flown into the sector. Most of the Asian countries, barring, let's say, China, and to some extent India, it's beginning to pick up. Most countries have typically lacked the availability of capital for green technologies. So any good financial models getting created wherein, let's say, you are crowding in capital, crowdsourcing capital, or raising capital in innovative fund structures and deploying them for uptake of these green technologies could again be very interesting opportunities. Finally, on the healthcare side, again, COVID has proven that a lot more needs to be done. And we also believe that there could be a very interesting overlap between healthcare and climate impact. The obvious one being remote healthcare, whether teleconsultation, telemedicine. These are great opportunities existing out there, which are both bringing about a significant climate impact reduction, but also at the same time improving health. Many of these epidemics and infectious diseases also have a very strong climate change link, and therefore solutions getting created to some of them again will fit in very well with our health tech lens. And finally, creating resilient healthcares and supplies becomes extremely important, and COVID has again proven that it is very, very important that, especially at the last mile, there are interesting solutions that are created for distribution of healthcare, both as healthcare delivery as well as healthcare products. So these continue to be interesting areas. As we speak, we've started investing, as I said, sorry, excuse me. We started investing out of our seed fund. We now have five seed investments that we've done in the region. I'll give you a quick flavor, and we've picked up some of these to give you a flavor of how varied these are. Right from a brick and mortar company, literally, which is the first one, which is actually creating a new chemical and physical binding process to bake bricks, which increases the productivity by up to 10x, to, let's say, a company like the company 4, which is an affordable ERP solution, helping small mom and pop stores to operate more efficiently, have access to or create the right kind of data which allows them to then subsequently also be able to lend, or rather borrow from many of the lenders in the region. It's again more of a tech play, digital tech play. On the other hand, if you look at some of the other ones, so the company 5 is actually a very interesting agri company, which is leveraging a lot of waste that gets generated out of a pineapple plant or a pineapple, and reusing it to create natural leather. And they've been able to, again, this is an example of a company which has originated in in UK and Spain, but very actively working in the Philippines, given the significant amount of production that happens of pineapple in the region. So a very interesting spread that you will see, ranging from cold chain to sustainable tourism to agri-tech, fintech that we've got in our portfolio. As I was saying earlier, we have significant ability to add value to the startups. Of course, as ADB Ventures team, we have strong experience of investing in companies and accelerator companies. Many of our companies having received significant market validation, but at the same time, the broader ADB networks become extremely important, whether it is with utilities and large corporates or financial institutions. We also have a fund of funds, so strong networks with various other VC funds in the region. And finally, very strong equity expertise that we've got. And we can leverage our networks to add significant value to each of the company. In terms of our work, we'll be very happy to engage with all of you, provide support out of any of the 3 products that I laid out earlier, whether it is labs, whether it is seed, whether it is the fund. Very happy to engage. Here are our contact details. Feel free to reach out to us. I mean, directly or through Sami and team, but really appreciate this opportunity to talk to you. And I'm sincerely hoping that many of you guys would get interested in rolling out your solutions in the region. The region really needs your support, and we are happy to provide whatever hand-holding is required over and above what NIH provides to help you enter the region and provide you capital, networks, know-how, whatever it takes. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you so much, Kunal, especially those last encouraging words. So, because as we have a lot of Nordic companies here in our audience today, so there you have it. The doors are open. Your solutions are needed. Get you here and connect with the right stakeholders. Very good. I also want to remind the audience that the Q&A is open, so we have some questions coming in. Please keep posting those. We will address all the questions then at the end after Elba has been, from UNDP has been delivering her presentation. And on that note, Elba, Kunal, if you stop sharing the screen, and then we're going to hand over to Elba next.
Thank you, Sami. I'm going to share my screen now. So, do you see my presentation okay?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. So, first of all, thank you very much for inviting us and for this opportunity of collaborating. We're really happy to be here today and explain you a little bit which are our activities in the domain of smart cities. I will introduce you first the center, our approach to smart cities, how do we support our country offices throughout the world, and also which are our ongoing projects, so you can get a taste on the different activities that we do and different ways of engaging with us through this program. And then, as Sami said, there will be this Q&A following the presentation. So we're the Global Center for Technology, UNDP Global Center for Technology, Innovation and Sustainable Development. UNDP is the United Nations Development Program, which is the UN agency providing support to governments in low and middle income countries in the implementation of their public policies. As one of the 5 UNDP Global Centers, the center in Singapore, what we do is to provide support to our network of 170 country offices in Latin America, Africa, Asia, etc., in their efforts to provide support to the national governments, local governments, and stakeholders in the different countries. And we have 3 focus areas: sustainable agriculture, sustainable finance, and smart cities and digitalization. So we have different teams engaging closely with our country offices in the development, implementation, scaling up of these projects. So one of our main objectives from the center is to facilitate partnerships, identify solutions, merge efforts between different country offices with different stakeholders so that everyone can participate. So with what regards the smart city, the center has this approach to smart cities, and we believe that smart cities are important, not just because everyone is talking about that, but also because we consider that nowadays there are unique opportunities and challenges that developing countries are facing. So we find new challenges that had never been there before, that need innovative solutions, and that could benefit from the new ideas and new products and services developed elsewhere. So we think that it is important to be open to this innovation and new technologies to solve challenges that we didn't have to face before, or to find new ways of facing them. We also think that digital technologies especially, but innovation in general, can improve the lives and how the services are provided by governments. In many of these countries, we can provide low cost and very efficient services thanks to new technologies. So it is important to be open to this, to the opportunities presented by innovation and international companies on how to deliver services. Also, we think that it is very important to talk about the smart cities in low middle income countries, because this capacity, so the new markets that this opens and the opportunities, the economic opportunities that innovation can provide to local communities. So we have a strong focus on improving local stakeholders' capacities, scaling up their solutions, implementing and implementing them in local contexts, and also helping them to generate international partnerships so they can expand and also get expertise, information, and market opportunities from international partners. And finally, because we think that it is great in this globalized world to put together a lot of stakeholders, merge the different knowledges from around the world, and scaling and replicating solutions. So it is one of the advantages that we do not want to miss in solving nowadays challenges. We know that there are many definitions on what a smart city is, or what isn't, or what we want it to be. On our side, what we try is to always have in mind that a smart city should share a number of foundations, because without them, they wouldn't be as smart. So should be sustainable. So the capacity to improve social, economic, and environmental aspects in the long term and make them sustainable through time. They need to be resilient, so to be able to provide solutions that will stand shocks and make communities more resilient to climate change, but also to economic and social shocks. They need to be inclusive. So one solution is not smart if it's not promoting inclusivity, if it's generating a gap, or if it's generating inequality. So all the solutions should be considering this aspect. It's not just about technology, but also about innovation. And this needs to be, and technology and innovation need to be used to solve actual problems of citizens and governments. And finally, we think that the smart city cannot be smart if it's not thinking about partnerships, innovative partnerships on different ways to work, how to implement things different, how to generate new business models, etc. So we're really open, and we want to promote this cross-sector partnerships, not just between sectors, but also different, with the stakeholders, actors, breaking the silos within cities and between stakeholders. So the framework that we work with at the Global Center when working with our country offices is this one. This allows us to provide some understanding and putting names and classifying the different interventions. So we consider that the smart cities have these thematic areas, which would be the natural challenges that cities might be facing. So adaptable cities, everything related to adapting and mitigating climate change, how to make cities cleaner, how to make cities more livable, how to make cities more resilient to shocks. Inclusive cities would be all the challenges that are more related to improving government services, so making them more inclusive, generating economic opportunities, generating new services, making governments more transparent, etc. So this could be more related to this social aspect of cities. And finally, sustainable cities, would include all the challenges more related to circular economy. So how to make the best use of resources, be it energy resources, water, how to make the more circular the economy, how to recycle, how to manage waste, etc. Then what we have identified is that when cities want to address some of these challenges with new technologies, they find a set of other challenges more related to technologies. So that's what we call the smart city drivers, which would be like the foundations of how to use digital technologies, but also the new technologies for an innovation on how to solve these general challenges. So for instance, there are the digital infrastructure challenges. So in the low and middle income countries, we see some gaps and complications regarding digital infrastructure. So we help our country offices, national and local governments to define which could be the best strategy to improve connectivity and all the infrastructure that they might need for a project, be it sensors, equipment, everything that they need, more like the basics to begin operating. Then we also have identified this kind of data-related challenges, so more data management and analysis. So once we want to work with data and we have the sensors, for instance, to get into this data, we need to see how are we collecting this data, how are we storing this data, how are we analyzing this data so that it is useful for actually taking policy decisions. So that's another of the areas that we provide support in. Another of the foundations or challenges that we see when using digital technologies in our smart cities is everything related to ethics, regulation, institutional arrangements from the administrations. So that's another of the areas in which we provide support. So when you are doing a smart city project, it is not just about the technology, the connectivity and the data, it's also about how are you going to organize internally, which regulations you need in order to make it work and sustainable in time. And finally, we also provide support in financing and innovative partnerships, and as one of the foundations of these smart cities, because we consider that it is necessary to work and experiment on new ways of cooperating. So in this section, what we try is to facilitate this kind of partnerships, identify new actors in the market, identify which are the main companies and stakeholders interested in that, and trying to generate projects in these aspects. So how do we provide all this support to our country offices and in these different challenges? We have several service lines. So as the Global Center, we provide this support to our country offices, and it can take several forms. I will walk you through all of them. The smart city delivery ones I'm going to present them at the end because they are the pilots that we're doing in different countries. So I think that that's worth a special section. So first of all, we do this smart city training series. It's an initiative that we launched in March. What we try to do with this smart city training series, we're doing due to the COVID-19 situation, we're doing all of them virtually so far, but what we want to provide is our country offices and development practitioners in general. So all the actors operating mostly in Africa and Asia, we want to provide them with some specific insights on concrete topics. So we try to present these kind of challenges that you can face when trying to implement a smart city project in a city, and provide really concrete guidance on how you can solve this project. So for instance, we already did some on circular economy, on big data, lean data, mobility, etc. And we provide like some roadmaps or some hints on how you can work using new technologies or addressing this kind of sectors. So in this smart city training series, we're always partnering with universities, with corporates, startups. We're looking for really practical knowledge that can be applied and experts in the field So we're always really keen on discussing new topics and how we can provide these trainings to our country offices. We're also working on a smart city insights platform. So with this, what we want is to generate some thought practices and provide perspective about the smart cities. So in this, we want to showcase innovative practices, how new technologies have been used to solve problems in low and middle income countries, and also new methodologies or approaches regarding the smart cities that have potential and that we want to inspire them. So in this aspect, we are really open to know about new practices, to see if maybe we can help you in publicizing them. So writing a blog, an article, collaborating in a joint paper, etc., regarding some topics that can be of interest. So we're always really open to knowing more about innovative practices and putting actors. What we do is like more detailed and curated knowledge pieces. Currently, we are, for instance, we do it ourselves, or we commission it through procurement processes to some to strategic partners. So right now, what we're doing is a smart city archetypes work. We're working. We will be working on the definition of new standards for smart cities that can be inclusive for the concept of smart cities in Africa and Asia and Latin America too. So we have seen that the discourse, the narrative in smart cities is quite focused on what is a smart city in wealthier countries, and we want to try to provide some guidelines on how to approach the topic, considering the specificities of the countries that are our beneficiaries. So on this, we are going to be doing some consultations. We will be publicizing them through in our social networks and also our newsletters. So I would encourage you to follow us in those networks to be updated regarding this topic. We're also working on a data policies and flow in Asian region. So we're doing one study right now on which are the national regulations regarding data collection, data sharing between countries. We're also working on a methodological toolkit on how to shape smart city projects in low and middle income countries. So taking into consideration all the stakeholders, how to select the technologies, how to shape the project to make sure that the technology is the most useful possible and that we're also aware of unexpected effects. And finally, we're also working on a piece, best practices compilation. So in this, I would also encourage you to get in touch through Sami or the other contact point if you're working on a project that you think that could be a best practice in your sector, to share it with us, because we might be able to share it with our country offices as an example of ways of doing things in the smart cities and or products or services that can be rolled out in their context. Another of the service lines that we're working on is the communities of practice, in which we want to put together several stakeholders with high expertise in one topic and identify the barriers that they have had in collaborating together and actually implementing services. So with this, we will be gathering, it's something that we want to roll out by the end of the year. So we want to involve startups, big corporations, city councils, experts in the field, civil society organizations and NGOs. So we can see, for instance, in really concrete aspects, like if we want to do a waste management project regarding plastic recycling, which have been the problems from a startup that has an innovative solution to enter the market, which are the problems that the city councils are facing, which is the opinion of an expert, etc. So we want to put several stakeholders together to identify what has good practices and which have been the main barriers for collaborating or getting to a successful project and finding solutions to that. So on this, we will also be reaching out to some stakeholders that we think that can provide interesting insights on this topic, and we will be very keen to know more about Nordic expertise in these areas. Finally, we're also doing now a multi-city challenge. It is a new initiative that it is just launching across 5 countries in Africa. I know it's not the region that you're most interested in this webinar, but we are looking also at replicating something similar at a point in other countries. So we are doing an open innovation challenge across 5 cities in parallel, with training to city officials on how to implement innovative methodologies and engagement methodologies with citizens, and identifying the best solutions that will be taken into consideration for implementation in next year. So the sectors that we will be focusing on this challenge in these cities are waste management, financial inclusion, greening cities, youth and informal sector employment, resilience, and e-governmental services. So these sectors are still under discussion, but these are some of the areas of most interest for these 5 cities. So as I said, in the smart city delivery, this service line is where we actually work hand in hand with our country offices in order to implement smart city projects on the ground. So it comes from their cooperation with national and local governments. They have received the demand, the request to support them in these areas. And then what we do is we facilitate these partnerships, provide technical expertise, and help shaping the project with them. So these are currently the smart city pilots that are ongoing or under discussion. Not all of them are active. The light blue ones are the ones from the multi-city challenge that I just mentioned in Africa. So in terms of sectors, because as you see, we have several countries, in mobility, the main sectors that are requested from national government to be supported by national governments or local governments are really related to pedestrianization and bicycle use. So how to design more walkable or cyclable cities. Several of our country offices are also exploring shared mobility and micromobility solutions. So it's something that, especially with COVID-19, but even before, it was quite interesting for our beneficiary countries. The electric vehicles, especially focused on shared mobility or public transportation, it's also an area of high interest for them. And then how to improve public transformation, how to better integrate informal transportation sector as a city service is also one of the key areas of intervention. And we have also had some initial conversations on last mile logistics, but this is still something that it's not that much been addressed from our side. Another of the main topics of interest, both Africa and Asia, is waste management. So there's a lot of demand from cities and national governments on mapping the flux of materials in the city and identifying the best areas where the intervention should focus in initial stages. So many of the countries might have a strategy, but do not have this mapping or do not have these specific areas of intervention that well defined. So this is something that is really, really demanded and receives a lot of interest. Also, another of the areas that we have been working is on monitoring the services. So how to improve and monitor how the waste collection or waste management is going to have some information on how the service has been being provided and where it needs some reinforcement. Also, there's what is interesting in this domain is that in many of these countries, we find that waste collection in some areas is not, so these areas are not really accessible. So another of the areas of where innovative solutions are sought is in the vehicles to collect the waste, that they can be trackable, but also that they actually have the necessary characteristics to access these areas. And as you can imagine, valorization is also one of the main topics. So innovative solutions on how to treat and valorize plastic, glass, and organic waste. And also in Africa, it's quite interesting, the sand as a problem in waste collection. And then also behavior change, how to improve citizens' behavior so waste is more recycled, is reduced, etc. Many of our country offices are also working in promoting entrepreneurship through city challenges or promoting with local partners accelerator programs. In these regards, we are always looking for international partners that can partner with these the startups that are being supported. So I think it's also a nice and interesting way of accessing one market to partner with local partners, and these partners normally receive some support in terms of coaching or even financially in some cases. So we look for these international partners to go with them, but also RDI partners that can provide some new technologies and improve their possibilities to succeed in these markets. And also in the framework of these accelerator programs, we're always looking for teachers, speakers, and evaluators or mentors that are keen on providing some kind of expertise to emerging startups. So this could be also another area of collaboration if you're keen to collaborate with these startups in Asia or Africa. And finally, digitalization is one of the biggest areas of support that we have. Many national and local governments approach us to help them shape a roadmap, shape their digital strategies, set a roadmap. This can end up in several specific projects to implement the digital strategy. Also, there's a lot of interest on how to approach smart cities and how to merge this concept of public services with technology use. And as I said, it also covers a lot this technical expertise that we're providing in terms of how to collect data, which kind of software you can use, which are the foundations of digital services, cybersecurity, etc. And from the Global Center, what we're trying to promote a lot is the use of open source software that allows of fast and easy deployment and also low-cost solutions. And finally, one of the most rising areas is e-payments. So how to facilitate e-payment, especially in Africa, but also in Asia, how to facilitate tax payments or payments from in mobility or vendors payment, etc. So everything that it is related to digital money and how to make it finance more accessible, e-money more accessible. So this would be a fast overview of our activities and cooperation opportunities on our site. I encourage you please to follow us in our social networks and follow and subscribe to our newsletter. And we will be very looking forward to knowing more about your companies and more ways of cooperating the following months. Thank you. Over to you, Sammy.
Very good. Thank you so much, Elba, for sharing this. Really very comprehensive, and thanks especially sharing all those examples and delivery lines. So let's jump to the questions then actually directly. We already have a couple of here in the Q&A. Just a reminder, so please use the Q&A function to ask the questions. Please remember then to indicate also who the question is for. And Elba, maybe we start then with you. We have a question coming from Mari from Finland. So in which smart city sub-teams there are more digital solutions available and in which less? And Mari, then the company is operating the field of community engagement and communication.
Thank you. So yes, I'm reading the question right now. So the solutions that we're finding, I would say that both Africa and Asia have a really active startups ecosystem. But so first, the topics that they are shared in importance in both continents and countries is mobility and waste. So besides digitalization, there's a huge need of innovative solutions. And even if there are a lot of them, I think that there's an interest of keeping piloting new solutions because many of them the ones that are provided might not be scalable. So I think that in Asia particularly, there's a growing demand on mobility, e-mobility and micro-mobility solutions, I would say. We have seen it a lot. In terms of community engagement and communication, we have received more demand in Africa about that, on governance, how to improve governance, how to involve stakeholders. In our experience, and it is just depending on our country office's demand, in Asia, we have not received that much demand on this kind of technologies. And we do not know. It's not one of the main topics either being addressed by our accelerator programs, as far as I know. So I would say that the focus is more on Africa in this sector.
Okay, good. Thank you, Elba. And let's take the next, Elba, let's stay with you, please, for next questions. Coming from Riku, so how to find out more about smart city related accelerators and other activities you do in certain countries in Southeast Asia and might be relevant to the Nordic companies and experts?
So in this, I would propose Riku to engage in a conversation. We have a couple of projects that will be launched soon in Southeast of Asia on accelerator programs, and also a couple in Africa. So in this, I think that it will be interesting to have a conversation between your office and our offices and see the different topics that our country offices report and how we can collaborate on that. So I think that this program is perfect to engage in these discussions.
Yeah, and maybe if I can add a little bit more from our point of view, as smart cities is and has been and will be one of our key focus areas. So, which means that also in this area we are trying to partner as many smart city related accelerators, incubators, or different innovation challenges. So we do have I'm not claiming that we know all of them, but quite a few. So you can also then contact us, and if you have specific details, we can help you connect these papers.
That would be great.
As well. Yeah.
That would be great to come with your expertise.
And Kunal, then maybe we go to you. I saw there was one question coming from Christopher. Thank you, you answered that already, but maybe if you want to elaborate that more, I think that's probably quite relevant and important. So the question was like, what is the expected duration of funding decision from initial contact between the company and ADB Ventures for the investment decision?
Yeah, so typically for a seed investment, which is the smaller sub $200K that we would give out, it is a much quicker decision. The investment decision can pretty much happen actually within 2 to 3 weeks time, but at times, of course, the documentation process can take much longer, maybe up to a couple of months. So that's a much faster decision making that can happen internally because it's a light touch investment process. For the larger investment that we would do out of the fund, which is typically of the order of $1 to $4 million, the decision making, as you would expect for most VC funds, can be a slightly more prolonged due diligence. And given the fact that this is a fund which is being managed by Asian Development Bank, we are required to do some amount of additional impact, safeguard, and integrity due diligence, which can take slightly longer. But typically, we are able to wrap up our investment processes within 3 to 4 months of the initial engagement that we have with an entrepreneur.
Okay, good. Thank you. Then we have one question actually for both of you. So are there any specific markets in Southeast Asia which are not eligible for UNDP and ADB fundings? Kunal, you want to go first?
No, it's a good question. As far as I am aware, we are not necessarily ruling anything out. What is important for us, and in an earlier slide, I did mention that we are going to be focusing on 3 broad geographies, which is the Southeast Asia, South Asia, and other developing economies. But I mean, as long as you are trying to build a solution which could have relevance to a developing country in the region, which is in broadly Asia, I think it should fit in most of ADB Ventures mandate.
On our side, there's no country which is excluded, and actually we have country offices in all of the countries. So we partner with all of them in a smart city projects whenever necessary.
Okay, good. Then there was one previously came in one question also, which is for ADB and actually Nordic Innovation House. So if the companies participate in the market entry program in October and want to meet ADB, should they then contact Kunal directly or will go through the process of the market entry program? I can. Yeah. Okay, so then like an actually good one, because in a way, of course, during the program you're able to meet multiple stakeholders and also I would say probably broader ADB team and who you're able then to present your solutions and then take the conversation from there. But I could not guess up to you that like if you want some companies contact you directly, that would be possible, I assume.
Yeah, very happy. I mean, we've already shared the contact details. If people haven't noted it down, we are happy to send it across to you, Sami, and you could share it with the group here.
Yeah, we can. Yeah, we can include. Yeah. Good, thanks. We can include those to the decks. What we're going to include then the thank you for the participants. Good. Do we have any other questions? There was a follow-up question from Christopher. This was related to the funding or what is the timeline? I believe it's more kind of like how the Business Finland could be aligned with their.
No, we'll be very happy to explore this, Christopher. Let's connect offline and see what are the best ways of us engaging.
Good. Right. And then we had a couple of questions from Lars and Christine. Yes, we will basically send the video recording and also then the links for the presentations for the participants after this presentation. So in 24 hours, you will receive an email from us. Okay. Okay. Well, if we don't have any more questions from the audience, I would like to thank you both Kunal and Elba from UNDP and ADB Ventures. And like we mentioned earlier, UNDP and ADB will be part of our Smart City program as well in October. So then all the program participants are able to meet also then, I would say, broader team from both organizations. So then I noticed that there are some companies or participants who actually already in our program. So this was a good kind of like a starting point, and then you will meet these probably same people again in October. But with that note, thank you so much for our guest, Kunal and Elba. Thank you so much for participating, being us here today. Thank you for all of our participants dialing in, spending your afternoon or morning, depends from which part of the world you're dialing in with us. And with that note, thank you and stay safe.
Thank you so much, Sami.
Thank you for inviting. Thank you.
Thank you.